The storm before the fall, the sky over Chicago had turned an angry shade of gray by 3 in the afternoon. Jessica Monroe sat in the sterile conference room on the 19th floor of Morrison Media Group, watching raindrops race down the window while her supervisor's words became background noise to the thunder rumbling outside. "We've made the decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately." Those words cut through her distraction like lightning splitting the sky. Jessica's hands, folded neatly on the glass table, began to tremble. She looked up at Rebecca Harrison, the woman who had smiled at her during her interview 2 years ago, promising growth and opportunity. Now that same face wore the mask of corporate efficiency, emotionless and final. "I don't understand," Jessica managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "The campaign failure wasn't my responsibility. I only stepped in to help coordinate because Derek was overwhelmed." The weight of loyalty. Rebecca glanced at the HR representative beside her, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked like he wished he could disappear into the gray walls. "The client specifically requested accountability," Rebecca said. "Someone has to take responsibility for the missed deadlines and budget overruns. Someone." That word hung in the air like smoke. Jessica understood immediately what wasn't being said. Derek had powerful connections within the company. His uncle sat on the board of directors. Jessica had none of that protection. She was expendable. A convenient scapegoat for someone else's mistakes. She had covered for Derek 3 times in the past 6 months. Staying late to fix his errors, attending client calls he forgot about, even using her own ideas to salvage his failing presentations. And this was her reward. "I see," Jessica said quietly, her throat tight. "When do I need to clear out my desk?" "Your access card has already been deactivated," the HR representative said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. "This contains your severance package and final paycheck. Security will escort you out once you've gathered your personal belongings." The walk of shame. 20 minutes later, Jessica stood at her desk for the last time. The small, succulent plant she had nurtured for 2 years sat in its ceramic pot, leaves reaching toward the fluorescent lights that had illuminated countless late nights. Beside it, a coffee mug that read "Make Today Amazing" seemed to mock her. A framed photo of her grandmother smiled at her. From the corner of the desk, she carefully placed these items into a cardboard box that smelled faintly of old paper. Around her, colleagues kept their eyes glued to their computer screens. A few weeks ago, these same people had laughed at her jokes in the break room, invited her to happy hours, asked her advice on their projects. Now they treated her like she carried a contagious disease. Failure, Jessica thought bitterly, was the one thing people feared catching most. The elevator ride down felt like descending into darkness. Each floor number glowed and faded. 18, 17, 16. By the time she reached the lobby, the storm outside had intensified. Rain hammered against the glass doors with violent determination. Stepping into the storm, Jessica pushed through the doors and immediately felt the cold assault of wind and water. Within seconds, her white blouse was plastered to her skin, her carefully styled hair hanging in wet strands around her face. The cardboard box began to soften in her arms, its bottom sagging dangerously. She tried to hurry toward the bus stop, but her heel caught on the uneven pavement. The box tipped forward, spilling its contents onto the wet sidewalk. The photo frame hit the concrete and shattered, glass scattering across the ground. Papers swirled away in the wind like wounded birds trying to fly. Jessica knelt on the cold pavement, trying to salvage what she could. Her hands shook as she picked up the broken frame. Behind the cracked glass, her grandmother's face smiled up at her. That photo had been taken at Jessica's college graduation, a day filled with pride and promise. The woman in that picture had believed her future was bright. What happened to her? Jessica whispered to the broken image. Where did she go? A voice in the rain, "You're going to catch pneumonia if you stay out here much longer." Jessica looked up to find a man standing above her, holding a large black umbrella that shielded them both from the downpour. He was tall, probably in his mid-30s, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that somehow remained crisp despite the weather. His dark eyes held concern, not pity. "I'm fine," Jessica said automatically, the words every struggling person learns to say. "It's just rain." "No," he said gently, crouching down beside her. It's not just rain. It's the universe testing whether you're going to let this moment define you. Something about his tone made Jessica's practiced defenses crack. A sob escaped before she could stop it. She covered her mouth with her hand, embarrassed to be falling apart in front of a stranger. The man didn't seem uncomfortable with her tears. Instead, he began picking up her scattered belongings, carefully placing each item back into the soggy box. When he reached the broken frame, he studied it for a moment. "Your grandmother?" he asked. Jessica nodded, not trusting her voice. "She looks proud of you," he said. "I imagine she still would be." Sheltered from the storm, there's a coffee shop just around the corner. The stranger continued, standing and offering his hand to help her up. "Let me buy you something warm. You can wait out the worst of this storm." Jessica hesitated. Every safety lesson she had ever learned warned against following strangers. But something about this man felt different. Maybe it was the genuine kindness in his eyes, or maybe she was just too exhausted to care anymore. "Just coffee," she said, accepting his hand. "Nothing more, just coffee," he agreed. The shop was small and warm, smelling of cinnamon and fresh bread. They sat at a corner table while steam rose from 2 cups of coffee. Jessica wrapped her cold hands around the ceramic mug, letting its warmth seep into her frozen fingers. "I'm Nathan," the man said. "Nathan Holbrook." Jessica Monroe. She managed a weak smile. "Though I'm not sure that name means anything anymore." "Why do you say that?" And somehow, despite barely knowing this man, Jessica found herself telling him everything. About the job she had just lost, the colleague she had tried to protect, the loyalty that had been repaid with betrayal. Nathan listened without interrupting, his attention never wavering. The seed of hope, when she finally ran out of words. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "I run a nonprofit organization called Cascade Foundation," he said. "We work with young people whose society has written off, giving them opportunities to discover their potential. I'm always looking for people who understand what it means to be underestimated." Jessica looked at the card. The paper was thick and elegant, embossed with silver lettering. "I don't understand." "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Nathan said. "I know you stayed in the rain trying to save a broken picture of someone you love. I know you insisted on paying for your own coffee even though you probably shouldn't spend the money. I know you protected someone who didn't deserve your loyalty because you believed it was the right thing to do." He stood, leaving money on the table for both their drinks, despite her earlier protest. "The offer stands whenever you're ready. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of something better." Walking away from the wreckage after Nathan left, Jessica sat alone for a long time, staring at his business card. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The city lights were beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. Turning Chicago into a canvas of gold and shadow, she looked at the soggy box of belongings beside her chair. 2 years of her life reduced to broken frames and wet papers. But in her hand, she held something new, a small rectangle of possibility. Jessica stood, gathering her ruined possessions. As she pushed through the coffee shop door, the evening air felt less hostile than before. The rain had washed the streets clean, leaving them glistening under the streetlights. She didn't know if she would call Nathan. She didn't know if she could trust anyone again. But for the first time since sitting in that conference room, Jessica felt something besides despair. She felt curious about what tomorrow might bring. Behind her, through the coffee shop window, the barista was wiping down tables and humming softly. Ahead of her, the city stretched out in all its complicated beauty, and in her pocket, a business card waited with a stranger's promise that sometimes losing everything was just the beginning. Jessica took a deep breath and started walking home, her shadow stretching long behind her under the streetlights, pointing back toward everything she had lost while her feet carried her forward into the unknown. The phone call that changed everything. 5 days had passed since Jessica lost her job. 5 days of staring at her laptop, scrolling through job postings that all seemed to require 3 more years of experience than she had. 5 days of watching her savings account shrink with each bill payment. 5 days of holding Nathan Holbrook's business card, turning it over in her fingers until the edges began to fray. Her apartment in Lincoln Park had never felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in on her each morning when she woke without anywhere to go. Her roommate, Bridget, tried to be encouraging, but Jessica could see the worry in her eyes. Rent was due in 3 weeks. On the 6th morning, Jessica sat at her tiny kitchen table, drinking instant coffee because the good stuff was too expensive now. Rain tapped against the window again, a gentler rain than the storm that had torn her life apart. She picked up Nathan's card one more time. "What do you have to lose?" she whispered to herself. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Jessica almost hung up. Cascade Foundation, this is Morgan speaking. "How may I help you?" The voice was warm and professional. Jessica cleared her throat. "Hi, my name is Jessica Monroe. Nathan Holbrook gave me his card and said I should call if I wanted to discuss an opportunity." "Oh, Miss Monroe." "Yes, Mr. Holbrook mentioned you might reach out. He's actually in a meeting right now, but he asked me to schedule a conversation with you as soon as you called. Are you available tomorrow afternoon at 2? Jessica blinked in surprise. He had been expecting her call. "Yes, I'm available. I'll send you the address." "Oh, and Miss Monroe, Mr. Holbrook wanted me to tell you something. He said to tell you that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's showing up anyway." The Cascade Foundation the next day. Jessica stood outside a renovated warehouse in the West Loop. The building's brick exterior had been cleaned and restored, large windows letting natural light flood the interior. A simple wooden sign read, "Cascade Foundation, where potential meets purpose." Inside, the space was nothing like the corporate offices Jessica had worked in before. Instead of cubicles, there were open work areas with comfortable furniture. Instead of fluorescent lights, there were large windows and soft lamps. Photos covered one entire wall, pictures of teenagers and young adults, each with a handwritten caption telling their story. Jessica Monroe. She turned to find a woman about her age approaching, wearing jeans and a friendly smile. "I'm Morgan. We spoke on the phone. Mr. Holbrook is just finishing up with our youth mentorship team. Can I get you some coffee while you wait?" "That would be great. Thank you." Morgan led her to a cozy seating area. "Fair warning, our coffee is nothing fancy. We spend our budget on programs, not espresso machines." Jessica smiled. "After this week, instant coffee tastes like luxury." "I heard you had a rough time at your last position," Morgan said gently, handing her a mug. "For what it's worth, I think you're going to fit in perfectly here. You don't even know me. But Nathan does. And I've worked with him for 4 years. I've never seen him personally recruit someone before." The interview that wasn't Nathan appeared a few minutes later, looking more relaxed than he had in his formal suit. Today he wore dark jeans and a navy sweater, somehow managing to look both casual and put together. His smile was genuine when he saw Jessica. "Came," he said simply. "I almost didn't, but you did. That's what matters." He gestured to a nearby conference room. "Come on, let me show you what we do here." For the next hour, Nathan walked Jessica through Cascade Foundation's programs. They worked with young people from difficult backgrounds, teens aging out of foster care, kids from underfunded schools, anyone who had been told they weren't good enough. The foundation provided mentorship, job training, college prep, and most importantly, belief. "We don't save anyone," Nathan explained, echoing words he had said in the coffee shop. "We just give them tools and space to save themselves." "It's beautiful," Jessica said, meaning it. "But I still don't understand what you want from me." Nathan pulled out a worn folder. 3 years ago, you proposed a campaign to your company. It was called Voices Unheard. The idea was to let homeless youth tell their own stories through photography and writing, then use those stories to change public perception and policy. Jessica's eyes widened. "How did you know about that?" "I have my sources. The point is, your company rejected it. Said it wasn't commercial enough. Didn't fit their brand image." "But Jessica, that's exactly the kind of thinking we need here. Not someone who wants to use sad stories to manipulate donations, but someone who wants to empower people to change their own narratives." He slid the folder across to her. "I want you to bring that vision to life here. Be our Director of Youth Engagement. Design programs that put power in the hands of the kids we serve, not just money in our coffers." The presentation challenge, there's just one thing, Nathan continued. My board of directors needs to approve all new hires at this level. They want to see what you can do. Tomorrow, we're having a meeting to discuss our next major campaign. I'd like you to present your ideas alongside 2 other candidates. Jessica's stomach tightened. Tomorrow? That's less than 24 hours. I know. And I also know that the best ideas don't come from weeks of overthinking. They come from the heart. Nathan stood, his expression softening. Jessica, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be yourself. That's all you need to be. That night, Jessica barely slept. She filled pages with notes, crossed them out, started over. By morning, she had something simple but honest. No fancy graphics, no corporate jargon, just truth. The room where it happened, the Cascade Foundation conference room, held 7 people the next afternoon. 3 board members, Nathan, Morgan, and 2 other candidates. One was a polished man in his 40s named Richard, who had worked for 3 major nonprofits. The other was a young woman named Tanya, fresh out of graduate school with degrees in social work and nonprofit management. Richard went first, presenting a slick slideshow about emotional storytelling and donor engagement. People give when they feel, he said confidently. We need images that tug heartstrings. Show them the pain, and they'll open their wallets. Tanya presented next, discussing data-driven approaches and measurable outcomes. Her presentation was thorough, professional, impressive. Then it was Jessica's turn. She stood, clutching her handwritten notes. No slideshow, no charts. Just her voice and her conviction. I think we've gotten it wrong, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. We keep telling stories about broken people who need saving. But what if that's the problem? What if every time we show the world someone's pain and call it their identity, we're taking away the very thing they need most, the belief that they're more than their circumstances? She looked around the room. Nathan was watching her intently, a slight smile on his face. The kids you work with don't need us to cry for them, Jessica continued. They need us to see their strength, their creativity, their potential. They need campaigns that say, look what I built, instead of look how sad I am. They need to be architects of their own stories, not subjects of ours. She held up her simple proposal. Hand-drawn sketches of young people holding art they had created, inventions they had designed, businesses they had started. This is builders, not beggars. Let them show the world what they can do, not just what's been done to them. Because pity might open wallets, but respect opens doors. The room was silent. Jessica felt her cheeks flush. Had she been too bold? Too critical of traditional approaches? Then one of the board members, an older woman with silver hair, began to clap. Now that, she said, is exactly what this foundation needs. The answer she didn't expect after the presentations. Nathan asked Jessica to stay while the board deliberated. They sat in his office, a warm space filled with books and photos of kids the foundation had helped. I'm sorry if I was too harsh about traditional approaches, Jessica said nervously. I didn't mean to insult what works. You weren't harsh, Nathan replied. You were honest, and you were right. He leaned forward. Can I tell you why I started this foundation? Jessica nodded. 8 years ago, I was working in investment banking, making money, wearing expensive suits, living the life everyone said I should want. Then my younger brother Cameron aged out of foster care. He was brilliant, creative, could have done anything. But every social service organization treated him like a problem to be fixed, a sad story to be pitied. Eventually, he started believing that's all he was. Nathan's voice grew quiet. He died of an overdose 3 years later. And I realized that all the money and programs in the world don't matter if we're not treating people like they have dignity, like they're capable of greatness, not just surviving. I'm so sorry, Jessica whispered. Don't be sorry. Just help me make sure other kids don't get the same message Cameron did. Nathan smiled, and Jessica saw both sadness and hope in his expression. Help me build something that treats people like the powerful beings they are. Morgan knocked and entered. The board has made their decision. Jessica's heart pounded as she followed them back to the conference room. The silver-haired board member smiled at her. Miss Monroe? We were unanimous. Welcome to Cascade Foundation. The first day of something new, Jessica started work the following Monday. Her desk was by a large window overlooking the Chicago River, sunlight streaming across the wooden surface. Someone had left a small, succulent plant on it with a note. New beginnings deserve something green and growing. Welcome to the team. The handwriting was Nathan's. Over the next few weeks, Jessica threw herself into her work. She met with the young people in Cascade's programs, listening to their stories, their dreams, their frustrations. She designed workshops where they could develop their skills and showcase their talents. She created a photography project where homeless youth documented their daily lives, not through a lens of poverty but through their own unique perspectives. Nathan checked in regularly but never hovered. He trusted her to do her job, offering guidance when asked, but never imposing his vision over hers. It was a kind of respect Jessica had never experienced in a workplace. One evening, working late on a grant proposal, Jessica looked up to find Nathan standing in her doorway. "You should go home," he said gently. "The work will still be here tomorrow." "I know, I just want to get this right." He walked over, glancing at her screen. "It's already right. You're just afraid to believe that." Jessica saved her document and turned to face him. "How do you do that? Do what? See things about people they don't see about themselves?" Nathan smiled. "I just pay attention. Most people are so busy performing that they forget to look." He hesitated, then continued. "Your old company was wrong about you, Jessica. You're not the person they tried to make you believe you were. Sometimes I still feel like her." The woman standing in the rain with a broken box. That woman, Nathan said softly, was strong enough to get back up. Don't forget that. When kindness becomes complicated, as autumn deepened into winter. Jessica found herself looking forward to moments with Nathan beyond just work discussions. The way he listened when she talked about her grandmother, who had passed away 2 years earlier. The way he remembered she took her coffee with cream but no sugar. The way his eyes crinkled when he laughed at her terrible jokes during staff meetings. One particularly cold November evening, Jessica stayed late finishing a presentation for a major donor. Around 9 o'clock, she realized she had forgotten to eat dinner. Her stomach growled loudly just as Nathan passed by her office. He poked his head in. "Was that your stomach or a angry bear?" Jessica laughed, embarrassed. "I may have forgotten about food." "Come on," he said. "There's a Thai place 2 blocks away that's still open." They walked through the cold Chicago night, their breath-forming clouds in the air. The restaurant was small and warm, decorated with golden lights and the smell of lemongrass. They ordered pad thai and green curry, talking easily about everything except work. "Can I ask you something?" Jessica said between bites. "Why were you out in that storm the day we met?" He never said. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I had just come from visiting Cameron's grave. It was the anniversary of his death. I always go alone, and I always feel like I'm drowning afterward." He met her eyes. "Then I saw you, and I thought maybe I'm not the only one who feels like they're barely keeping their head above water." "You saved me that day," Jessica said softly. "No," Nathan replied. "You saved yourself. I just held the umbrella." The whispers begin by December. Cascade Foundation's new campaign was generating buzz. Major news outlets were covering the Builders, Not Beggars initiative. Donations were increasing. The young people in their programs were thriving. But with success came scrutiny. Jessica first heard the whispers in the break room. She had arrived early to make coffee when she heard 2 staff members talking, not realizing she was there. "I'm just saying, she got hired pretty fast," one voice said. "And Nathan never acts that way with other employees. Think there's something going on?" "I don't know, but it's convenient, isn't it?" She shows up out of nowhere and suddenly, she's running major programs. Jessica felt like she had been punched. She set down her coffee mug and walked back to her office, her hands shaking. All day she noticed things she hadn't before. The way conversations stopped when she entered rooms. The sidelong glances from coworkers. The knowing smiles that felt more like accusations. That evening, Nathan stopped by her office. "Hey, a few of us are grabbing drinks to celebrate the campaign's success. Want to join?" "I don't think that's a good idea," Jessica said, not looking up from her computer. Why not? Because people are already talking, Nathan. They think I got this job because of some kind of personal connection with you. His expression darkened. What people think doesn't change the truth. The truth. Jessica looked at him directly. The truth is that I was vulnerable and you offered me help. And now everyone assumes there must be something inappropriate about it because apparently that's the only way a woman can get ahead. Jessica, that's not fair. Maybe not, but it's reality. She stood, gathering her things. I need to go. The distance that grows over the following weeks, Jessica pulled back. She stopped staying late. She kept conversations with Nathan, strictly professional. She declined invitations to staff events. She built walls around herself, brick by brick, trying to prove to everyone, including herself, that she had earned her place. Nathan noticed, but didn't push. He maintained his distance, respecting her boundaries, even as Jessica could see the hurt in his eyes. The foundation continued to thrive, but something essential had changed. The easy warmth between them had been replaced by careful politeness. They were like two people dancing around something neither wanted to name. One Friday evening in mid-December, Morgan found Jessica alone in her office, staring out at the snowy Chicago skyline. You're miserable, Morgan said bluntly. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Morgan sat down. Look, I know people have been gossiping. People always gossip when they're jealous. But pushing Nathan away isn't going to stop them. It's just going to make you both unhappy. I can't go through this again, Jessica whispered. At my last job, people thought I was sleeping my way to the top too. It destroyed me. Were you? No, I was just trying to survive. No. Morgan asked gently. Are you trying to survive? Or are you trying to live? Jessica didn't have an answer. The charity gala in late December. Cascade Foundation hosted its annual winter gala at the Drake Hotel. It was the organization's biggest fundraising event. A glittering evening where Chicago's philanthropists gathered to celebrate the year's accomplishments. Jessica had helped plan every detail but had considered skipping it. In the end, Morgan convinced her to attend, even taking her shopping for a dress. The gown they chose was deep emerald green, simple but elegant, making Jessica's hazel eyes shine. When she arrived at the Drake, the ballroom took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across white tablecloths and winter floral arrangements. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Nathan stood near the bar, wearing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. When he saw Jessica, he stopped mid-conversation, his expression unreadable. She almost turned around and left. Then she remembered Morgan's words, survive or live. The speech that changed everything after dinner, Nathan took the stage to address the crowd. He thanked donors, celebrated the foundation's achievements, and introduced several young people whose lives had been transformed by their programs. Then his tone shifted. When I started Cascade Foundation, he said, his voice filling the ballroom, I thought I knew what these kids needed. Resources, opportunities, programs. And yes, they need all those things. But someone recently taught me that what they need most is to be seen, really seen. Not as problems to solve or charity cases, but as human beings with dignity, potential, and power. He paused, his eyes finding Jessica in the crowd. That someone is our Director of Youth Engagement, Jessica Monroe. She came to us after being treated as disposable by people who should have valued her. She could have become bitter. Instead, she chose to make sure other people never feel that way. She reminded me that the best way to help someone isn't to save them. It's to believe in them. The room erupted in applause. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes. After his speech, couples moved to the dance floor as the quartet began playing something slow and sweet. Nathan made his way through the crowd toward Jessica. Dance with me, he said simply. People will talk. Let them. He extended his hand. I'm tired of living my life based on what people might say. Jessica hesitated, then placed her hand in his. He led her to the dance floor, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers gently. They moved together in silence for a moment, the music wrapping around them. I'm sorry, she whispered. For pulling away? For assuming the worst? You were protecting yourself, Nathan said. I understand that, but I hurt you in the process. He was quiet, then admitted, "Yes, you did." Jessica looked up at him, seeing vulnerability in his face. "I spent so long believing I wasn't worthy of good things that when you showed me kindness, I convinced myself it couldn't be real, that there had to be some other reason. And now," his voice was barely above a whisper, "I'm trying to believe that maybe I deserve something good, that maybe we both do." Nathan pulled her slightly closer. Around them, other couples danced, but Jessica barely noticed. In that moment, the room could have been empty. "Jessica," he said softly, "I need you to know something. I didn't help you that day in the rain because I wanted something from you. I helped you because I saw someone who reminded me of everyone I've ever tried to help through this foundation. Someone strong and broken and still fighting. And then I got to know you, and I discovered you're everything I never knew I was looking for." Her breath caught. "Nathan, I'm not asking for anything," he continued quickly. "I just needed you to know. You're not here because of me. You're here because you're extraordinary. And whether you ever feel the same way I do or not, that won't change." The truth revealed, the gala continued around them, but Jessica barely noticed. Her mind raced, her heart pounded. Before she could respond to Nathan, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. A woman in an expensive red dress was arguing loudly with security. "I have every right to be here. I'm a former employee of Cascade Foundation." Jessica's blood ran cold as she recognized the voice. It was Vanessa Pierce, a woman who had worked at Cascade 2 years before Jessica arrived. She had been fired for financial misconduct, though the details had been kept quiet. Nathan's jaw tightened. He moved toward the entrance, but Vanessa was already pushing past security, her eyes wild. "You all think Nathan Holbrook is some kind of saint?" she shouted, clearly intoxicated. "But let me tell you about his new favorite employee, Jessica Monroe. Did you know she was fired from her last job for embezzlement? That's right. And somehow, she ended up here, in a position of power. Makes you wonder what she did to earn it, doesn't it?" The ballroom went silent. Every eye turned to Jessica, her vision swam. This couldn't be happening. Not again. Not when she had finally started to believe in herself. Nathan's voice cut through the shocked silence like steel. "That's enough, Vanessa. Oh, I'm just getting started. I did some digging after I heard about your precious new hire. Morrison Media Group quietly let her go after money went missing from a client account. They didn't press charges because they didn't want the publicity. But the truth is the truth," Nathan interrupted coldly, "is that you were fired for stealing from this foundation. And now you're making false accusations because you're bitter. Security, please escort Miss Pierce out." But the damage was done. Jessica could feel hundreds of eyes on her, judging, assuming, condemning. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. She couldn't breathe. The beautiful ballroom suddenly felt like a cage. Without thinking, Jessica turned and ran. The article that broke everything Jessica made it home somehow. Oh, she barely remembered the taxi ride. She sat in her dark apartment, still wearing the emerald dress, mascara streaking her face. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, but she couldn't bring herself to look. By morning, it was everywhere. Cascade Foundation's new star, charity case, or con artist. The Chicago Tribune's gossip column had picked up the story. Some blogger had somehow gotten access to partial records from Morrison Media Group, carefully edited to make Jessica look guilty. The article didn't directly accuse her of theft, but it asked troubling questions about her sudden rise at Cascade and her relationship with Nathan Holbrook. Social media exploded. Strangers who had never met her felt entitled to judge her character, her motives, her worth. By noon, 3 board members had called emergency meetings. By evening, Cascade's largest donor had threatened to pull funding unless the situation was addressed. Jessica sat on her couch, watching her life collapse in real time. Again, the confrontation Monday morning, Jessica forced herself to go to the office. She owed Nathan that much, to face this directly rather than disappearing like a coward. But when she arrived, the atmosphere had completely changed. Staff members who had smiled at her last week now looked away. The young people in their programs, the ones she had worked so hard to empower, stared at her with confusion, and something that looked like betrayal. Morgan met her at the door, her expression pained. "Nathan wants to see you." "His office." Jessica nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like walking toward an execution. Nathan stood at his window, looking out at the gray Chicago morning. He didn't turn when she entered. "Nathan, is it true?" His voice was flat, emotionless. It was somehow worse than anger. "Is what true? Were you fired from Morrison Media for financial misconduct?" Jessica felt her heart crack. "It's not that simple. It's a yes or no question." Jessica, yes, technically, but he finally turned to face her, and the look in his eyes destroyed her. Disappointment, doubt, distance. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't true." "I was set up, Nathan. I took the fall for someone else's mistakes. Just like I tried to explain the day we met. Derek Harrison was stealing from client accounts, and when it was discovered, he made it look like I had done it. The company couldn't prove which of us was guilty, so they fired me instead of him because he had connections and I didn't. When you have proof of this?" "No. That's the point." He was careful. "I was just the convenient scapegoat." Nathan turned back to the window. The silence stretched between them like miles. "The board is meeting this afternoon," he said finally. "They want you suspended pending an investigation. Do you want that?" Jessica's voice broke. "Do you believe I'm capable of stealing?" He was quiet for so long that Jessica had her answer before he spoke. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he said quietly. "I've been betrayed before, Jessica. By people I trusted completely. People who seemed genuine and kind right up until the moment they stabbed me in the back. I'm not them. That's what they all said too." Jessica felt something inside her shatter. She had thought Nathan was different, that he understood her. But in the end, he was just another person who would believe the worst when it was convenient. "You once told me," she said, her voice shaking, "that these kids need people who see their strength, not just their circumstances. You said pity doesn't help anyone. But the second someone accuses me, you're ready to believe I'm exactly what they say I am. That's not fair, isn't it?" Tears streamed down her face now. "You built this foundation on the idea that people deserve a chance, that they're more than their worst moments. But apparently that only applies when it's comfortable. When believing in someone might cost you something, suddenly it's easier to doubt." Jessica, she pulled off the Cascade Foundation ID badge she had worn so proudly and set it on his desk. "You don't have to suspend me. I quit. Don't do that. Let's just what? Pretend that you didn't just show me exactly how fragile your trust really is. I've lived through this before, Nathan. I won't do it again." She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "You know what the saddest part is? I was falling in love with you. With the man I thought you were. The one who believed in people even when it was hard. But that person doesn't exist, does he? You're just as scared as everyone else." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything. The rain returns, outside. It was raining again. Of course it was. Jessica stood on the street corner, watching water run into the gutters. Carrying away leaves and trash and broken dreams, she thought about that day. 6 months ago when Nathan had found her in the rain, offered her his umbrella, his kindness, his belief. She had thought it was a turning point, the beginning of something beautiful. But maybe it had just been a delay. Maybe the universe had always planned for her to end up here, standing in the rain again. Alone and accused and helpless against the cruelty of people who judged without knowing. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Nathan. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. She finally turned it off and walked home through the downpour, letting the rain wash away her tears until she couldn't tell which drops came from the sky and which came from her eyes. The man who wouldn't give up for 3 days. Jessica ignored the world. She didn't answer her phone, didn't check her email, didn't look at social media. She just sat in her apartment, staring at walls, wondering how many times a person could lose everything before they stopped getting back up. On the 4th day, someone knocked on her door. Jessica ignored it. The knocking continued, persistent but not aggressive. "Jessica, it's me." Nathan's voice came through the door. "Please, I need to talk to you. Go away. But first, I need to show you something. I don't want to see anything. Jessica. His voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. I know that doesn't fix anything, but please, give me 5 minutes. Then I'll leave and never bother you again if that's what you want. Against her better judgment, Jessica opened the door. Nathan stood there, soaking wet, holding a folder. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Can I come in? She stepped aside wordlessly. He entered her small living room, dripping on the hardwood floor, and set the folder on her coffee table. What is that? Jessica asked. The truth. Nathan opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, internal emails, and security footage. After you left, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said. You were right. I let my fear make me doubt you. So I hired a private investigator to look into